Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to be giving a very thorough and step-by-step explanation on how to ship packages for Depop within Canada specifically, and all the many different options you may have depending on if you have equipment such as like a scale or a printer or nothing at all. And I know if you've never shipped anything before, it can be super overwhelming. I know that's exactly how I felt the first time I had to ship something, but now that I've shipped over 100 packages at this point, I feel like I've got the process down pretty well. So let's get into it. So the very first thing you might be wondering is how much you should charge for shipping, because when you're listing an item in the app, you have to set the price yourself. Depop leaves everything up to you when it comes to shipping, right down to the price. But in order to set a price, we kind of have to understand how shipping works. So at the end of this video, we are going to come back and talk about what you should set your shipping price at. But for now, let's explain everything first so you understand the shipping process. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit and let's say that you've made your first sale. So we're going to talk about where to find the details of the order and the address that you're supposed to ship to. So if you go on your profile on Depop, and then at the very top, you're going to see a little symbol that kind of looks like a receipt. So if you click on that, this is going to be the section that holds all of your receipts, whether that's things that you've sold or things that you've bought. So if you sold something, it's obviously going to show up on the sold side. And if you click on that specific sale that you just sold, it's going to give you all the information about the sale. It's going to give you the description of which item it was, how much you charged for the item and the shipping, the Depop fee, who you sold it to, and much more. But most importantly, it's going to give you the shipping address of the buyer. So now that we have the buyer's shipping information, let's talk a little bit about packaging. So something that I wish I knew from the very start is that you can pretty much package something in just about anything. You don't have to use a box necessarily, and you don't have to get one of those like fancy bubble mailers that are super overpriced from the post office. So personally, I like to get these large envelopes from the dollar store. I find that like most clothing items usually fit in these, and when you break down the cost, they only cost 20 cents each, which is pretty cheap. And then I'll just use these smaller ones for anything that's a little bit smaller. Now, of course, you want to make sure that your item is protected, especially if it's delicate. So you would use like bubble wrap or any sort of like lining to make sure the package is safe. But like for most clothing items, these mailers are like perfectly good to use. Another thing that I really like to do is reuse old Amazon boxes and those plastic mailers that they send you like packages in normally. So anytime somebody orders like a package in my house, I always hang on to the packaging and I reuse it for like some of my maybe more delicate items that need bubble wrap, or bigger items that need to fit in a box. And not only is that like good for the environment, it's gonna save you money, and especially for those like bigger like plasticky mailers, the bubble wrap, like those can tend to be a little bit more expensive. You can even buy like a big giant roll of craft paper, and then that way you can just like cut it and tape it to any size package that you want. One person that I bought from actually sent me my package in this like old paper Aritzia bag. So it just goes to show you that you don't have to be fancy. Like you can pretty much package in anything as long as the item is protected. That's the most important thing. And I'm sure that the buyer won't mind you reusing packaging or like maybe using unconventional packaging, as long as, you know, it's eco-friendly and it's good for the environment. Okay, so now that we've got packaging down, let's talk about the different types of mail that there are. So Canada Post is pretty much the standard for mailing in Canada. So that is the shipping provider that I'm going to talk about for the rest of this video. Now, there are two different types of mail: lettermail and parcel. So lettermail is typically used for exactly what it sounds like, sending like letters and documents. But as long as the item that you're sending fits the appropriate weight and dimensions, you can actually ship your items as lettermail, which is a significantly cheaper option than shipping as a parcel. Now, the downside to lettermail is that it does not come with tracking. So if your package were to get lost, Depop would actually end up refunding the customer on your behalf, because you're supposed to have a tracking number when shipping on Depop. So this can be a little bit risky, because if the thing that you're selling is a little bit more valuable, you could potentially lose that money. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind if you are going to ship letter mail. I have definitely shipped letter mail many times in the past, but recently I have been trying to kind of avoid it for that reason. Now, to meet the requirements for letter mail, your package cannot exceed a weight of 500 grams, and the dimensions cannot be bigger than 270 millimeters by 380 millimeters. So something really important that I didn't see written anywhere on the Canada Post website is actually that your letter can't be thicker than 2 centimeters, otherwise it's not going to fit into the mailbox slot. So if your package is any bigger than this and cannot meet the requirements for letter mail, you're going to have to ship it as a parcel. But I will leave a link in the description that you can put in your dimensions of your letter mail, and it will calculate how much it is going to cost depending on the weight and the size of your letter. So the second type of mail that I mentioned is a parcel. So you can ship anything as a parcel, even if it is like small enough to be letter mail. So the main difference is that parcels always include a tracking number when shipping within Canada, and they are significantly more expensive than letter mail. So the price of the parcel is going to kind of change drastically depending on the size, the weight, and especially what province you are shipping to. So I'm going to leave another link in the description to the Find a Rate tool, and that is just a tool where you can input the dimensions of your package and the weight and where it is coming from and going to, and that will give you an estimate of how much it's going to cost. You can also see the variation of the different prices depending on what service you want to go with, whether that's just regular mail, express, or priority. The difference between these is just how many days it will take to end up shipping to the customer. Usually regular mail is totally sufficient. It's the cheapest option. It does take the longest usually, but unless the customer has requested that their package arrives earlier and they have paid that extra cost for express or priority mail, then regular mail is totally sufficient and good to use. Okay, so now that we've decided whether or not we're going to go with letter mail or a parcel depending on your package, let's go into detail about the different ways that you can actually ship your package. So the first, and I would say most basic way to ship, is to just take your package to the post office. This is a really great option for anyone who doesn't have a scale or printer at home because they kind of have all of that there at the post office. So before you go, make sure that your item is already packaged because they are not going to do it for you and they don't provide any tape or anything like that. And make sure that you've already written the address onto the package nice and clearly so that the employees can read it easily. And of course, just make sure to double check that the address is correct because you don't want to make a mistake. So then once you get to the post office, you can literally just hand your package to the employee and let them know if you want to do letter mail, if it qualifies, or a parcel. Maybe you weren't sure at home because you weren't able to quite measure and weigh it, but don't worry, they will be able to tell you there whether it qualifies for either or. And then you'll also tell them if you just want regular, express, or priority mail, if it's a parcel. So then the employee is just going to put the appropriate amount of stamps on it if it's letter mail, or they're going to put a barcode sticker on it if it's a parcel. There is also an option that you can do, and they're called flat rate boxes, and sometimes this option can actually be cheaper depending on all the variables, but as you can see, it is like quite expensive. So unless your shipping ends up costing more, I probably wouldn't recommend that. The employees are usually good and they'll let you know if the flat rate box is actually going to be cheaper, and then you can just take your package and put it inside and save some money that way. So I just thought I would kind of slide that in and mention it, that the flat rate box is an option. It might not always be the best option though. And then once you pay, you're all good to go. They take care of the rest. So I really like this option, especially when I first started out, because it was just so easy and the employees pretty much did everything for you. And it's really nice because you actually have a one-on-one with the employee where you can ask them any questions that you might have. I also never had to worry if I was putting enough stamps on my letter mail, because sometimes that can be confusing as well. And the actual time it takes to ship the item tends to be a little bit quicker because there are more frequent pickups at the actual post office rather than if you were to drop it into a mailbox. The downside to shipping at the post office is that you may not live close to a post office or have easy access to it. Another downside is that there is usually a line depending on what time you get there, so that can be quite time consuming to have to wait in the line just to ship your packages. So I just wanted to make a little side note about letter mail. Now, if you were to purchase stamps in advance, you can actually just put your stamps on the package yourself and drop it off in a nearby mailbox. mailbox instead of taking it to the post office. You just have to make sure that you're putting enough stamps so that it meets the value requirements depending on the size and weight of your letter mail package. So next, I'm going to talk about more ways that you can just drop your package in the mailbox instead of going to the post office. Now, the next option is to ship parcels online with Canada Post. So with this option, you will need a measuring tape, a scale, and a printer in order to accurately measure your package and print the label. I honestly wish I learned about this method sooner because it saved me so many trips to the post office. And honestly, if you are shipping a lot, it is kind of worth investing in a scale. You just have to make sure you get one of like the food scales or one that's just like going to be able to measure small, light quantities. And they're usually cheap, like they range from $15 to $20, so it kind of does make it a little bit worth it. So for this option, you're going to start by logging in or creating an account with Canada Post. And then you're going to look under the tabs and you're going to go to personal, sending, and then click ship online. So next you're going to click create a shipping label, and then you're going to click create a package. I don't know why you have to click so many things, but that's just how it is. So at the top, you're going to fill in your information, and then underneath you're going to fill in the buyer's information. And then at the very bottom is where you're going to fill out the package information, so the weight, the dimensions, all of that. And if you notice, it is pretty similar to the find a rate tool that we showed earlier, so it's like pretty easy to use. So then we're going to hit continue, and it's going to ask us what service we want for the parcel. Like I said before, regular, express, or priority. So then you're going to click on whichever one you want, and then once you've verified everything, you can just pay and print out your label. So once you have your label printed, you can just like cut it out to fit to size of the package properly, and then you're just going to tape that onto your package, and your package is good to go. So then you don't even have to go to the post office. You can just go to one of your local mailboxes. You just have to make sure it's one of those bigger ones that can fit larger packages. The typical mailbox that's probably on your street will only be able to fit probably like smaller letter mails in there. So the big mailboxes are usually located around like plazas, convenience stores, that type of thing. This method is great because you don't have to go to the post office at all. It does take a little bit more time, you know, filling out all the information yourself, like printing out the label and that sort of thing. But I personally think it's the easier option between the two. Another cool thing about this is you can actually create multiple labels at once and then print them all together. And you can even actually schedule pickups at a cost, of course, to your house, where Canada Post will literally come and pick up your packages for you. Of course, you kind of have to be selling a lot of packages to make that worth it, but it is an option. Now, the final way to ship is super similar to the last one we just talked about, except that we're going to be creating our labels through PayPal instead of the Canada Post website. I think this is the best option if you can do it because it's really just the quickest and cheapest option, actually. So of course your PayPal should already be connected to Depop because that is the way that you get paid. But in order to actually ship and print labels from PayPal, you're gonna have to convert your PayPal into a business account. Now, when I did this, it actually made me input my registered business information. So if you don't have a business, I don't know if it's gonna let you do this. But once you have changed it to a business account, you can log into PayPal and you'll see your summary, you'll see all of your sales. So click on the sale that you want to ship, and you'll see a little option that actually says ship. So click that and then scroll down and you'll see PayPal shipping. So we're gonna click on that option. At this point, it's super easy because your PayPal is already connected with your Depop. PayPal already has the buyer's information in there, so you don't have to go in and start filling out their address, which saves you time and then also saves you the worry of possibly making a mistake and like typing in someone's address wrong. All you have to do is put in the package's information like before, the weight, the dimensions, and then you can click on what type of service you want and calculate the shipping cost. And when you make your PayPal a business account, you actually get discounts on shipping. So that is why this is actually the cheapest option when shipping. So then you would obviously just print out your label like normal, put it on your package, and drop it in a mailbox. So now that we know how to ship, we've shipped our item, we're almost done. You just have to go back into your receipts on Depop like before, and we need to update the shipping provider and tracking information if applicable. Once that's done, it's actually going to send a notification to the buyer that the package has been shipped. I personally like to just message the buyer separately again just to let them know that I shipped. They usually really appreciate that. And that's it. You're done with shipping. Okay, so remember at the beginning of this video where we talked about what we should actually list our shipping price at? So now that you understand how shipping works, we can actually go over the options of what to list the shipping price at, because it is hard to put a price on shipping when the shipping can vary so drastically. So there are a few ways to do this. The first one is to just set a fixed shipping price. So for example, what I like to do is I like to just set all my tracked shipping at $10 for anyone purchasing within Canada. This means that if the shipping does end up costing a little bit more, I am going to be taking a loss on the profits for the item. I personally like to do this because I feel like it just makes it super easy for the buyer. They don't have to go through that extra step of messaging me beforehand, and I feel like that just increases my chance of sales because they don't necessarily have to wait for my response. They can just buy it outright. So this can obviously be a little bit trickier, a little bit riskier, because there is potential to lose money. The shipping might even be so expensive that you don't make any money at all and you actually lose money. So you obviously do have to take that into consideration when listing the price of your item. Now, if you don't really feel comfortable with that, there is another option where you would just set the shipping price pretty high, like let's say $20, and then you would make the buyer message you before purchasing. That way they can give you their location information. You can go back to that find a rate tool and input it and get the estimate of how much the shipping is going to cost, and then you would change it specifically for that customer. And then worst case, if someone were to just outright buy it without messaging you, at least you know for sure you have enough money to cover the shipping cost. So this is definitely the safer option. I see a lot of people doing this on Depop, but like I said before, it does create that extra barrier for the customer before purchasing the item that they want. So that is pretty much everything you need to know about shipping. I think I covered it all. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment. I'd love to answer it. I hope this video was super helpful. I know it's probably going to be like so long, but I really wanted to be thorough and like talk about every little detail, because I know how confusing shipping can be, especially like when you're first starting off. And this might have seemed like an overload of information, but I promise once you do it a couple times, it just like becomes super easy and it's like not a big deal at all. And of course, if you want to check out my Depop shop, it is depop.com/Alicia12, which I'll leave in the description. And if you wanted to comment below your Depop, I'd love to give you a follow. So thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.